Right.
Okay, I'm gonna mute it.
Hey, they said we live.
Oh yeah, I see that. Can everybody hear me?
I can
Yeah,
hear
I
you
can hear you.
perfectly well.
Okay.
Okay, perfectly well. I just want you brothers to introduce, because the voices don't sound. This is my first time being on the show with you two brothers. So I guess Dotta and who else?
My name is well, I'm O Doss on YouTube. My name is Ollie Doss.
Okay.
You can call me Ollie. Yeah,
Okay, no problem, bro.
I'm new to this platform too. Long time listener, but yeah, I'm happy to be on and be discussing these things. So
Okay, oh, that's perfect, brother. I'm just trying to get this set up. I'm trying to get out this chat room. But yeah, to introduce myself, I'm Neo Black. I've been in the BAIO for quite a while, I should guess. As if anyone who hasn't, known me or whatever. I've known Holip personally for about over at least 8 years. So yeah, it's been some time. So I've been on and off again with the regular broadcast. What I usually do is I prefer like to discuss the STEM shows, discussing different types of technology that we can bring to this land infrastructure nationhood process. Um, Basically, how we can apply it. One of the things that I personally like to discuss in terms of applying STEM is practical STEM applications that we can employ like here and now or in the near future. In addition to that, discussing future applications such as when a nation state is actually built, you have a government, you have a system of collecting taxes and revenue, so you can engage in more ambitious projects. Um, I would actually like to ask Brother Dotta. You're here right now?
I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, excellent, brother. Because I've listened to the discussion you and Holip had with respect of acquiring land. Um, in the previous broadcast, acquiring land on the continent, and discussing what to do when that land is acquired, the people you will need. Such as surveyors, you need architects, you need people to sort of lay down power lines. And if you want to go totally off the grid or sort of the homesteading prepper route, even a power generation system. I just want you to sort of, just for background, give us a slight, recap on that discussion. This way we can go forward and just add a little bit more to that. Because, like you said, like the BAIO, hopefully next year in February, we're doing a trip to Rwanda. And it was like I said, we're interested in Rwanda because it provides a lot of the elements that we need to sort of get a proof of concept project off the ground. So if you would just tell us, going from your last broadcast, not too deep because we don't want to ever repeat it, of course, some of the things you will need in terms of, let's say, we get a strip of land, right? And I'm just give you a scenario. Say if it's, it's on a mountain, so we have a stream, but it's an empty land. It's just a plot, and we just want to put something on that plot. Like, for example, a small, like a bed and breakfast, the self-sustained bed and breakfast, of which, say we just initially have BAIO members come in and sort of do that for vacation. How will we get that started off this empty piece of land?
Like we discussed before, the process of acquiring the land before, all of the the negotiations deals has already been through. So I'm taking we already been through that process.
Yep.
But once we already get through that process, you know, we have to have a plan of what we are going to, what kind of infrastructure we're going to build, or the building that we're going to build, concept of the building, and that goes into the design professionals who actually present some of that stuff. Which actually I had the opportunity to talk to one of the brothers who actually sent us one of the concepts of the nation, kind of like a concept drawing of it. So it's kind of like that. And once you get that, get the concepts and finalize the concept or the idea, the plan, and then you move forward with the actual, you know, the land survey and all that good stuff for the most part. So and that goes into like the engineer making sure that what type of base that you're going to use for this building, how far up, what is the actual, what are your how you're going to lay your utilities down, you know, where's your water is going to come from, what kind of sewage system you're going to have, all that good stuff goes into all that planning. And the engineer is actually the person that puts that together and propose. Sometimes you actually can go back and try to make modifications, but those modifications probably, you know, kind of mess with the process of the plan of getting it built and stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much just, you know, just a cap of everything what we talked about.
Okay, all right, excellent. Now I want to ask you something about in terms of, okay, we build this thing in the engineering process, sort of the brainstorming process. So for example, if I'm going to have a piece of land, say if it's not connected to any grid of sorts,
right.
What type of technologies can we explore with respect to getting this this structure or series of structures built where they could have sustained access to power, water, being able to clean up sewage? Because I know in the South they have septic tanks and you have to get somebody to pump it out. But I would like to look from the perspective of, let's say, a nuclear aircraft carrier. I know it's a big, expensive piece of equipment, but that's a perfect model of a self-sustained environment with respect to having power, generating water, and cleaning sewage. From the perspective of just having a small plot of land with a very limited budget, what type of technologies do we have available to us now that we can sort of put into play, or sort of technological practices that we can utilize now that we could put to play after this thing is built, such that the people who are staying there are extraordinarily comfortable? They don't have to give up pretty much too much, if anything, because that's one of the things that we talk about. The main sort of selling points of BAIO and what we have to do is that, you know, your quality of life will not diminish at all. If anything, it'll increase given our efforts. So what type of technologies can we employ now with respect to generating power, cleaning sewage or water treatment, even generating fresh water itself, and sort of having the amenities that go with modern life? So yeah, with respect to that, because we have like a plot of land in the middle of nowhere. This is basically the brainstorm process, because that's what Nationhood will require, but on a much grander scale. Basically, you get a piece of land that nothing is going on in that land, and you have to basically build it up, given what you have. So if you could just tell us what you know, some of the technologies available for, let's say, generating power and cleaning water from there.
Yeah, so there is a whole bunch of like new technologies that they have going on. And I'll post some of them in the BAIO site as well. Like the solar grid, of course, everybody knows about the being familiar with the solar power that's going on. It's self-sustained. And also during my I was working with Caterpillar for the year, you know, working with them and some of the technology that they bought, where they have like the generator that runs along with the solar power, the solar panels itself. So you don't have to use as much fuel to run it as long as you have that solar power going on. And it's also sustainable, whereas, you know, you can even start sharing that energy off the grid as well. They also have like you said, the thermal engine energy stuff. But you know, for the if we want to just live like that, we can start right there, because you know we don't actually have to go into the deeper technology. We can just use something that's basic that we know we can pick up and move as we go along. So that will be something that we should invest in, and it's not that much. And from far as I know, that most people that companies that build these things, you know, the competition is so great that you know you don't have to just, it's only, you know, one person doesn't just own the rights to this technology. So yeah, you know, you probably get a good deal off of that, you know, as long as you probably do like you know, a warranty or something like that, where they actually come out and actually you know, do the after maintenance on it for so many years, and you can actually run your sewer system off of it. If it's you know, using electric, you can use for the water, you know, the generator or whatever we have for our source, whatever we're using to get that water, to pump that water. You're going to take some electric, some energy. But also, Ollie, he should know some of this stuff too. So yeah.
I agree with everything you're saying. I think alternate energies are going to be probably the backbone of how we create energy in our new country. Also, there are some African countries that are tapping into the transatlantic communications backbone, and I think we could do that as a foundation for a comm system. My buddy and I were talking about this because his idea, he wanted to start with how do we get a satellite into space, which would be about $500,000 for like a basic satellite. And from there, I mean, that's kind of total freedom, because now you're controlling your own communication system. And from there, you can build a cell tower, you can build a backbone, and from there branch out and develop your own central offices and your hubs and nodes and everything. But yeah, I agree with Dotta and everything he's saying. I worked with First Solar for a while. That's where I really kind of got my knowledge of solar panels. I was a characterization engineer for First Solar for 3 years. And the way that they were setting up in like cities like Frankfurt Oder in Germany, and it's a town outside of Shanghai in China, but basically the solar systems were basically the power plant of the towns. And I think with the continent and developing on there, that would be a wonderful idea. And from there, I mean, we're going to have to come up with more methods of generating our own energy, including electric, including coal, you know, things like that. I think we can avoid a reactor. I mean, for a while, I mean, we live in a nuclear age. So at some point, Afrikan would have to become nuclear to some degree, you know, not just to compete in the world, but to protect itself, because we're dealing with superpowers with nuclear powers. And if we're going to really protect ourselves and keep our autonomy and keep our sovereignty, we're going to have to kind of play that game to some degree. But I think, and don't count out wind turbines either. I think wind technology is amazing. And I look at the wind farms as I live in the Rocky Mountain region, but we're also close to Kansas. So like Eastern Kansas has a beautiful wind farm, and I think if we model something like that on the continent, that creates all kind of possibilities for clean energy, being a leader in clean energy, you know, and really creating jobs. And from there, we can design networks powered by that. So and I don't know where we would be, but like dam technology too. I know in northern Africa they have dam technology, but depending on the plot of land we get, that would have to go into it. Like
hydroelectric, you mean?
Yes, 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 yes.
Well,
Right.
yes, and I'm glad you mentioned that. Sorry for cutting you off. But there
No,
is,
no, no,
because
you're right.
I posted in the discussion group, the small link discussion group. There is actual micro hydroelectric technology that you can buy online, wherein you could power a small house by a stream.
Hmm.
It's
Yep.
actually doable. Of course,
A lot
it
of people
depends
who live
on
off the grid do that.
Yep.
yes, and I'm
A
definitely,
lot of
and
people
I
who
was,
live, they'll yeah, they'll move somewhere in the Ozarks and live well, not completely, but they're pretty sustainable off the grid. I mean, just by rivers and streams, and they figured out a way to power their homes that way. So yeah, I agree with you.
exactly, and I was thinking about this in terms of doing this from a perspective because we have a major end goal, which is basically the nation state itself, where we have all the amenities of a modern nation state, a sustainable grid, consistent power on the grid, public transportation, roads, highways, defense system, economy, the works. And I'm thinking about this from the perspective, okay, if we were to take BAIO members now, just 10 of us, I'm just
Hmm.
doing a hypothetical, wherein we just get a plot of land and explain the scenario before, where we do the sustainable thing, because we have families in the United States and elsewhere who are living pretty much off the grid and pretty much able to live
Hmm.
comfortably. What I also want to
Hmm.
discuss, because what you guys mentioned was different types of technology, redundancy of the grid, also seasonal based alternative energy generation. For example, say if we're in an area, because like we're gonna stick with Rwanda, right? Rwanda, of course, has a dry season and wet season, and it's a pretty hilly area. So what happens is during the wet season, the streams from the hills they flow pretty regularly. That means that we have micro hydro dams or hydro systems during the wet season. We can get a consistent source of power.
Right.
Also, up in the hills, you have wind, so you can get certain types of wind turbines, and they have very efficient wind turbines that aren't so unsightly or disruptive to the environment. We all know the 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 standard vane axial wind turbines. So if anybody doesn't understand what that means, vane axial means it looks like the fan in your house, pretty much.
Right.
There are other different types of wind turbines where it's not a vane axial sort of design, but it's like a coiled design. If someone is an engineer in the house who's listening, and you could tell us what it is, that'll be really dope. Because I don't have access to the chat with me right now, so I can't really get in, things with the messages. But they're those types of wind turbines, and what I love about those is they're extremely efficient and they take up less space. So we have the wind element. And mind you, I'm just talking about we're just discussing technologies we can employ now. Of course, there is solar, and that's another benefit of a dry season. So there's not going to be much cloud cover, so we're going to get solar, right? I know that you two brothers are engineers. Explain the importance of sizing a system, of sizing sort of a power system that you're going to build for a community in terms of what are the conditions that you size for? So, for example, I learned when you're sizing a solar power system, you take into account of this system functioning with on the day with the least amount of sunlight, because you want this thing to run all the time with little disruptions to flows of power. Discuss sizing a system with respect to, let's say, starting up a small community or a small building, and taking into account of this community growing. So, for example, and I know Brother Dotta mentioned before, but sort of making modifications and the difficulties it comes. Like I said, what happens when you size a system and the more power is drawn from the system, i.e., more people coming in? And this is
Well,
the second question. Yeah, and this is the second question. What strategies can you put in place to sort of expand upon a system that is already sized for a certain capacity? Yeah.
well, that kind of ties into what I do as a network designer because what you have, like, I'll give you an example of a network, okay? Um, let's say we have a node for a new community, okay? And the community is
Mm-hmm.
going to have about 300 homes. So you start just with a basic node. And you're going to have two sides to that node. You have an A side and a B side, and those are, and from there, you kind of decide evenly, as evenly as you can. You don't want to go. Our limit is always, with the company I work with, the limit is 70-30. You don't want to be over 70% of usage for one side of your node. When you get over 70%, that's when you're going to do a segmentation or a split, in which case you're going to upgrade the node. This is where you make different types of nodes, because you have a one by one, and if your neighborhood's expanding, let's say a new subdivision is going in, and that's going to add more homes passed. So that way you're just going to simply upgrade to a 2x2, so that the load on that node, that you're going to basically put in a bigger node that can handle the load of that. And that's how the comms community handles it, with a simple node or a simple power source. And you can put in different models to split the signal until it gets so saturated to where you have to basically put in a new node. And I'm thinking that's what we would do here, is that we would have a basic source of power, and different ways to split that energy or that signal to serve more people, a growing population. And from there, I think you can design for a basic population and just split the signal until it gets so big to where you're just going to have to go on and put a new power source somewhere to serve whoever needs to be served. That's kind of the concept of like backboning and doing central offices and everything, so that you can serve more people. This is why it's so hard for like fiber optics. Like now they're with the new backboning technology, it's still a bit of a challenge to get into rural areas, because putting in a node, while in some instances it's efficient, it's also costly to put in nodes and to do and to expand, and that's why it's so hard. But it's a necessary evil that the companies have to swallow up, because new developments are going in every day. So that's where I come in. We do the survey where we can put a node, where the strongest signal is, and from there how we can most efficiently and less costly serve the homes passed that we're going to be servicing. So I mean, that's how I'm wrapping my head around it, in terms of how comms works. I assume energy would work similarly. Dotta can probably elaborate more on that.
Oh yes, please do, brother.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, I'm not like a energy expert here, but like I said, I've been in the field for a minute, being in the military and stuff, and working with the generators, mechanics and stuff like that, and also working along with the power company that supplied us power and stuff like that from these generators, and how they actually stored the energy, and how did the energy transfer to, like, if you got too much energy, what was one of the problem was people, well, they were gathering too much energy and they had no way to displace that energy. But like I said, like with the technology today, Caterpillar has all this. They have did the study, because they got Caterpillar University, where they they do their own studies, and they actually have this. I forget what it's called. It's kind of like a modular, where it stores the energy and it puts out the energy it needs. And so this way, where you won't have nothing that blows up. You know how sometimes you have like what they call blackouts, when people using too much power and stuff like that, or where something get fried. Yeah. So like I said, in this case, what we're trying to do is, once we start out small, and as Ali said, once we start getting bigger, you probably have to transfer over. But this machine itself also does that too. So as you add in, you can just add the pieces that you need, where, you can actually have it a big enough where you only need to use a small portion of it. And then once you start getting bigger, because, some of the stuff that we're probably using, going to take a lot more energy. And so, like I said, it's the technology is out there. So, but starting from scratch, you know, something small, and like you said, sizing it, and like how Ollie said, going through those steps and processes to figure out what you're going to need. You know, that's what all the stuff comes into play before we even get started. So, yeah.
And keep in mind
Yes.
too that like devices like repeaters and amplifiers, they are a bit costly, but in the long run, that you know, I know in the comms world, when you utilizing stuff like that too, and there's only so much that you want to use those, like in the cable world, it's called cascading, where you don't want to use too many amplifiers because then you're just being too hot on an area, and that's when you do create outages for yourself. But at the same time, I think we have the basic technology to use that, and we can look at the areas that we're going to be covering and set cascade limits and how much we really want to use power amplifiers and everything before we would really decide to put in a new power source or things like that. So, yeah, what we want to do is doable. The technology's here. It's all a matter of how we want to design it. I was talking to, I went hiking with a buddy from Kenya, and I had asked him, you know, what would be one of the biggest obstacles if we wanted to put a comm system in Kenya, if we wanted to just put total fiber in Kenya. And he said one is that Kenya has a strong rainy season, which means that the cheapest way well, not the cheapest, but one of the most efficient ways we want to do if we want a backbone would be strongly affected, because you'd have to dig deeper into the ground and that would cost more money. And that's boring and all that stuff, you know, putting all of our utilities down and into the ground. He said, well, the ground can get so flooded that it affects the utilities, and you'd have to be constantly out there moving your conduits, and you'd have to do rebores. That would get expensive. So I would really like for us to start discussing how much aerial opportunity we can create for ourselves in terms of like our power and our comms and everything, and try to stay away from boring as much as we can. I get that we're going to have to probably be like America in strongly and heavily densely populated areas. We're going to have to bore. You're going to have to go underground. Like I live in Denver, and to bore in downtown Denver that's almost 550,000 to do that. You know, because you got to take into consideration, I don't know what it would be in Rwanda, but things that they consider historic, you know, what their concept of property maintenance is and stuff, because that's what you deal with here. Like when pulling permits here, like we were doing an optimization for T-Mobile back in 2015, and we ran into a problem in New Orleans where they consider everything in like the Bourbon Street district historic, and so to carve that up that would have been a multi-million-dollar project, you know, and so those are the obstacles you run into. The way they solved that was, well, I guess that's a little too fifth grade for us. We're in kindergarten. We just have to build our own poles. But their solution to that was like to buy the poles, because once you own the poles, you can pretty much do whatever you want. And ownership of the poles means you're paying rent to like someone like XL Energy to put your name on the pole and use it for comms or power or something like that. I think at this stage we're building our own poles, so I guess that's an obstacle we won't have to run into. We would just have to coordinate with the local government as to how they envision their densely populated areas being serviced, and how they view boring. Boring might be cheaper in Rwanda. as opposed to the United States, because the United States you have so many stuff that they consider historic and decorative, and they can charge more. So that those are kind of the things we want to keep in mind too.
Exactly, and I'm glad. I'm sorry. Go ahead, brother.
No, so Ali, if I'm not mistaken, each electric, wherever everything is based off of a grid. Am I right? As far as electric.
Yes.
So, like, this is why some people lose power in certain grids. This is why it's important that what he was talking about, how you're going to set those things up, and if we're going to tie into their system, are we going to pull more from them versus, is it going to be a strain? So all that needs to be worked out before, we go over there.
Yeah, that's true. That's
stuff
true.
like that. And also,
I mean, I kind of had the cart before, though. I'm looking at it in terms of a comms, because power's a little different. Power's a little different because I mean, it is a grid system as opposed to a design to accommodate what's laying on the grid, and that's basically what comms is. That's why you can have stuff like Spectrum and Xfinity in a city, but if you move out to a rural area, that's where DirecTV cleans up and gets its money from, because you're dealing with satellites. It's all what you want to design on top of the grid. But like power grids, I'm not too familiar with. I only deal with the power companies in terms of like getting poles from them and everything, like using their property already, because that's how the comms companies, they come in, they put transformers on the poles, and from there you can run comm lines, and they run their comm system based on the design of what's designed on the grid already. But in terms of like how to handle a power load, I was approaching it with the psychology of communications, where you have a source, and from there you can efficiently split the source until that source becomes so saturated that you have to create another power source. That's my thinking.
Right. But I've noticed that in any terms you're dealing with communications and power generation, a lot of the physics behind all of it is pretty much the same, because you're dealing with the flow of electricity in both cases. Communications is built off the flow of current and things of that sort, much to a less extent than, I say, a power grid. I don't know of no electrical equipment that requires 10,000 amps of power, but a subway system may require 10,000 amps of power to run a train, to keep the third rail system going, and things of that sort. You also mentioned before cascading. Now, I wrote a few notes. If you could tell us, what exactly is cascading?
Well, in the comms world, cascading, like that more has to do with your coaxial technology, which I imagine we'd be using in Rwanda. It's going to be a basic system to start out with. That's where from a node you only want a certain amount of signal amplifiers on it before it totally drains the node, or before you start getting reverse input level problems and everything. So in certain projects, you'll get a cascade limit where from the node, they only want so many amplifiers placed before you finally just have to give up and put in another node. In some projects, it'll be like when you hear a construction guy say, "All right, we're building node +6." That means the node itself is going to be an amplifier, and from there they want to keep the limit of amps to 6 amps.
Okay.
So before you
cascading, it's basically how much you're pulling from. Cascading refers just to how much you're pulling from the node.
Exactly.
Much, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so if I'm going to make a correlation between that and the power system, our example of cascading would be like, say, for example, if there's a blackout, if too many people have their ACs on or something like that.
Sort of, because I mean, your ACs, I mean, you can kind of look at your ACs and anything you're using for power as kind of like your receivers for cable. Okay, those are, the point is to get enough signal to those devices to where they'll they'll function. The devices themselves, like a receiver, is not going to necessarily drain a node, but the further you go out from the power source, the more signal you'll be using, which means losing. So, which means you're going to have to either repeat or amplify that signal. And that's where the cascading it comes in, because you're basically, the amp is acting like a mini node, basically. And from there, as it's draining the node, it's creating more signal to go out further. That's the point of the amp to get. So I imagine in power, I don't know what they would use to really from a power source. I don't know what you would use from a power plant to amplify that signal, but the end goal is to make sure that everyone can use their air conditioners and everything. So with Dotta may know more about that. I'm not familiar with the power world, how you really got to get enough juice out to everybody, and how those signals are repeated or anything.
Right. Yeah. Like I said, I'm not no expert, so I just know just the basics. So, like I said, I mean, if you go around and you see these different like power hub stations where they got these big transformers and stuff out, everything is shared from off a certain grid, so everybody's pulled from that one power source. But if it's overused, that power source is going to go out. So just basic.
And that's another concept I want to discuss with you guys. With respect to sort of not only this answers to the question of redundancy in a power source. For example, decentralizing power, in a sense that if you build your infrastructure sense where you could do like let's say the most extreme form of decentralized power is that every single home or business has their own power source. Of course, that's not feasible because you'll take up a lot of space. But sort of having decentralized nodes, so to speak, with respect to delivering power. Another thing I wanted to discuss with you guys, because one of the things we wanted to discuss earlier, especially with this STEM show, is that sort of the cleaning of water. Now, water is like super essential in any, not just a nation, but any town or in a home, so to speak. If you don't have clean water, you're going to have some serious issues. And one of the things I learned, and because one of you mentioned Germany, is applying sort of merging both the processes. For example, so if you're cleaning sewage, of course, sewage gives off a lot of methane and ethane, these gases that come out of this. And of course, you can burn these gases to generate power. I also want to discuss like how merging the processes can sort of add to one another. So for example, anything that generates energy can contribute to the power grid. So for example, there's something called biomass, where in a lot of countries like in Brazil and Costa Rica, this is huge. And especially in areas like, let's say in East Africa, Rwanda, Kenya, nations of that nature, or the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where there's tons of vegetation. And, if you say, for example, clear vegetation or, using vegetation that's not going to, that's sort of the byproduct of a process. For example, let's say if you're growing wheat or whatever, the part of the weeds that's mixed with the wheat, the parts of the wheat plant you're not using, you could ship somewhere and break it down and burn it and generate fuel. I want to get a perspective on, so what is the importance of efficiency and everything? Because we live in a day and age where everybody's all about efficiency, with the exception of a few nations. Like China is not efficient at all with respect to how they do their stuff. From a very early process, let's say if we get something going on, how important will efficiency be, and how efficient will we strive to be with respect to doing whatever it is that we need to do? In terms of even from like, let's say from the basics, for example, we're in the kindergarten level of this, from the kindergarten to all the way to graduate school. How do we maintain high levels of efficiency? Even improving on it is more so as we go along. Brothers, y'all there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Dolly. You can answer that.
Well, as far as, let's start with the water technology. I've always been curious of that because I served 4 years in the Navy. I was on an aircraft carrier, and so you'd have like water restrictions because I don't know how true this was, but me and a shipmate of mine were talking one day, and they were like, yeah, they basically pull water in and desalinate it from the sea. And I know water desalination has been around. That technology's been around since like the 30s. I'm not sure how it works or the processes of that. But I was
can get into that for you.
Oh,
I can get into that for you. So, all right, desalination, basically what you're doing is just separating salt and water. And you can actually do this experiment in your house. There's two ways to desalinate water. You can filter out the salt through a process called reverse osmosis, when you take a high pressure system and you pump it through a really restrictive filter that will filter the salt out. That process, like I said, it requires a lot of energy, but it works very quickly. So that's the benefit of it. Also, you can do boiling evaporation desalination. Basically, you boil water, you collect the water turns into steam, and it collects in an area, so you'll have your purified water, and what you'll have left over is a heavier water called brine, which is the more saltier water, and you keep that process up until you get mostly purified water. So that's probably do it on an aircraft carrier. It's like a continuous boiling and boiling and condensing process, because on an aircraft carrier you have a crap load of energy. I mean, a nuclear reactor can go 20 years without being refused, so they got to do something with all this reactor power, and things of that sort. So that's a great process of desalination. Also, what goes in with desalination is water purification. It can be on the same process, but it can be a bit more complicated depending on what kind of water you're purifying. If you're purifying, say, organic wastewater or sewage, it's a much, I say, more straightforward and easier process than saying purifying contaminated water with like oil or some kind of chemical like an oil or industrial waste. So like something like for like sewage, because I've seen something on how sewer water is processed. Like for example, in New York City, they had remember that show years ago called Dirty Jobs, where Mike Rowe goes in and he watches somebody do a dirty job. Well, one of the people he went with was a sewer maintainer in New York. And I'll say this right now. I'm grateful that I don't have to do that job, but I'm grateful for the people who do that job, because that is like one of the most important jobs ever. So basically, if you're purifying, for lack of a better word, shit water, you basically have to separate the shit from the water first, and then you take that runoff water and you treat it with chemicals, so it's like chlorine and fluorine, or that sort, or you can boil it off. So that's the process with that.
I heard somebody talk about one time how survivalist tactics, where there's a method where someone could purify their urine and make it into drinkable water. How true is that?
I've seen something like that.
I've actually heard different things about that. One of the things I learned from survivalist tactics, and I don't know how useful this is going to be, but if anyone's listening, your plane crashes somewhere and you're stuck out, this may be useful. The best way to hydrate yourself with your urine is to actually go in through the other end of your let's say digestive system, because it hydrates faster. The lower intestines absorb water quicker. That's what they were saying. So rather than drink your own urine, you send it up the other way. That's one way. I know there are companies out here, survivalist companies, they have what is called a survival pen, where it's this pen thing where you stick in a stream of gross water and you drink out of it and you get clean water.
That.
Yes,
I think I've seen that on like gadgets or something like that.
Yeah,
it's a little science thing that they have.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go.
No, because I was saying, I know I know a guy. He says he has like 9 of them. So weird, because he lives in New York City in an apartment somewhere, but he's a prepper. That's beside the point. But go ahead. Were you saying something about that?
No, I was just saying, I've seen it. It's like a thing that I follow called gadgets, where people come and it's kind of like how the military do their processes of equipment that they're going to use. It's like they get all of these people that create these things, and they go ahead and they showcase it at like an expo or something and show you how it works or whatever. So it's the same concept. But also for everyone, so understand that, you know, the stuff that we're talking about, the military already had tried it and figured it out. Like literally, so like for the soldier that's going out in the field where they don't have potable water, we already have systems set up to use a potable water system that creates stuff that we can use, from dirty water to clean water. For instance, I was in the middle of Fallujah, and we was set up off this. We used their stream water, like their river water, and we used it, went through the Roku, and it came out clean water. Now, how they use it?
I'm sorry, let me ask you. What device did y'all use to transform the stream water into clean water?
It's called a Roku. So what it does is it sucks a Roku. So what it does is it takes the water from whatever water source that you have, it sucks it up, and it goes through a filter, and it goes through a process, and they add like a little chemical agent or whatever, you know, to make sure that it's sanitized, and then it gets distributed into like your little water buffalo that we used to carry around like that. So sometimes it depends on like the person that's trained to operate it. Sometimes they put a little bit too much chemical in it, but you can taste it. But you know, if you ain't got no water, that shit you think about that shit later. But it's just the fact that, you know, this stuff, you know what I'm saying, we riding around, we really don't have any water, but this is how we got water. So we ride around with these things, and we transfer and convert it to water. Goes to the Flint, Michigan thing, how that they have, the Army actually has the system to do this, to purify their water. Why the state don't want to use it is unbeknownst to me. But if we was to think of something like that, if we was going to start out like that, you know, that's a system that we can use. We'll probably find a company that's into that stuff, that technology, you know, so, and probably get it at a discounted price, you know. Exactly. And then, you know, our success story will be something that they will push off to the States, you know. They probably get more money for that versus, you know, where we at in where Afrikan, wherever we decide to go, you know what I'm saying? So
I have a buddy who's real into he's into the technology of like wastewater and all. I invited him on this, but he's out of town. But he has a knowledge that he's in the hemp industry, and that kind of circles back to our energy options is hemp based stuff. You know, because he was explaining to me all the different uses for energy that can be mined from using hemp. I don't know how we all feel about that, but what he was saying was amazing.
Sure of it. I'm 100% for it. I mean, because you know, there was another brother on Facebook. His name's Peter Brown, and he runs a group where they actually do stuff in Africa where they, you know, have enterprises going on, and he pretty much does the same mission statement as the BAIO. But earlier in his many of his posts, he would discuss hemp. What I love about hemp is that it grows really quickly. It cleans the air pretty good, so it sucks all the carbon dioxide and it grows quickly. So that's a way of utilizing solar power. Why? Because you use solar power for many things, photosynthesis, and you get a lot of fast-growing plants and you burn them, or you treat it, or you do some kind of enzyme action with them and it converts it to fuel like biomass, and you can burn the biomass. So that's another great aspect of particularly if you're living in the area like, say, Rwanda, where they are ample with vegetation. There's like really no desert land where they are, because how the climate is, it's surrounded by mountains, a mountainous region where it gets a lot of the moist air and stuff from the southern part of the continent, and it gets trapped in there. So it's like Costa Rica for the most part. Rwanda has pretty much the same climate as there. And I'm glad you mentioned hemp and things of that sort. Also, I want to discuss, because this is a science show, and how different that we are in terms of how we look at science as opposed to other groups. And we're not going to get into, you know, I don't want to get too much into the whole us different from them thing. But what I love about how this discussion is going is that we're not scared of science. Like, science is not a boogeyman kind of thing. Like, for example, we touched on the importance of using certain chemicals in cleaning water, like fluoridation, chloridation. And what I would like to do is get the opportunity to educate people properly on why these things exist. Because there are a lot of people with conspiracy theories out here talking about, well, okay, if you put fluoride in water, it's going to mess up your kid's brain. And I'm thinking, no, if it weren't for fluoride in the water, you'd be dying of cholera right now. So how is it important is to educate people on the application, particularly black folks, African-centered people, on the importance of using modern science with respect to bettering our lives and, you know, the sort of being proficient in modern science. Why is it so beneficial for us as a people?
Can I take a stab at that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Huh?
Oh, peace, Minister Dawood. What's up? How you doing?
Hey, Minister Dawood.
Good morning, Minister. Good afternoon, Minister. I'm happy to hear from you. And another senior BAIO member. I met him in Holip in person, by the way. We went to a comic book fest. But go ahead, answer and speak on to that.
Yeah, but he wouldn't allow us to take a picture with him.
I know. I was incognito. Yeah. That's
Here's what I know. I know that black people, white people also, are afraid of AI, commonly known as artificial intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the main reasons why people in general are afraid of artificial intelligence is all of the movies being put out about artificial intelligence going wrong and killing people.
Yeah.
So last night I watched this movie. I thought it was pronounced Ex Machina, but it's Ex Machina.
Yeah.
And in this movie, there's a dude that created two
That
AI
female,
robots.
Yeah.
Exactly. And at the end of the movie, some girl kills the creator, and then she leaves another dude to die. So and then the movie ends. So when you watch that, it creates a fear in you that if we use AI, number one, at the very least, it's going to take everybody's job. But at the maximum level, this world is going to be a world full of robots running around killing people, and that humans will not be here anymore. And that could be no.
Hey, brother Daewoo.
Sir?
Brother, your signals kind of in and out. Like everything you said was just kind of blurred out. Can you just repeat that again, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you perfect.
Okay, cool. So basically what I was saying is that all of these movies end with the death of human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And because all of these movies end with the death of human beings, everybody thinks that at the very least, robots and artificial intelligence is going to take their job. At the maximum, they think that robots are going to roam the earth and just kill everybody. In reality, artificial intelligence is designed to make you and I more productive. It's designed to speed up your everyday functions and make you and I more efficient. And
exactly.
It's just like anything. If I
think we lost him.
Brother, you there? I think we lost you. He might be driving. But I'm extrapolating. Yeah, we're here.
No.
We hear you now.
Somebody tried to call me.
Oh.
Okay.
Sorry about that. But what I'm saying is that AI in and of itself is just like, I'll give you a perfect example. If I'm about getting my money and I'm industrious, AI is only going to make me a better person to get my money. If I'm lazy as hell and I'm not about getting my money, AI is just basically going to make me obsolete. So what we want black people that's going to Afrikan, as well as going to be in our satellite communities to understand, is that artificial intelligence is your friend, is not corrupt. Artificial intelligence is energy.
Exactly.
The government is corrupt. Period.
Yes. And
I'd like to say something to this. Oh, man.
Oh, sure.
Oh no! I wanted to make a remark on what Minister Dawood was saying. One thing we got to keep in mind is that all the movies influence us, but we gotta also understand, I guess, the psychology that's making the movies. And not to get on a, white folks be like this, black folks be like this stuff, but those movies are made in a Eurocentric psychology.
Right.
And, at the basis of Eurocentric psychology is fear. It is a fear.
Right.
And, we assume that everyone is always going to be like the European, and that everything's a matter of survival and we got to fight for our lives. But I mean, in creating a society of our own creation, we have to keep in mind that even the AI is gonna be created in the likeness of our temperament.
Right.
So
Exactly.
it's not going to be a malicious, life-taking entity. We would be creating it to help people. Not that things can't go wrong. Hey, anything's possible. But
Yeah.
I mean, in the basic psychology of the African, you're not gonna see a Terminator situation created.
Right.
Exactly.
Anything that's life giving is always going to create things that are life giving. Anything that's
Yeah.
life taking is going to always create things that are life taking. So
Exactly.
I think I agree with them on that, and I would add that at the basis at the base of our not inaptitude, I'd say our lag in sciences is that we've allowed other people to create a culture for us that makes sciences and technologies unrealistic for us and not appealing to us, in the sense that we're not a very, even African Americans aren't a very literate people to a degree in which we can use it for liberation. Or
Yeah.
if we are read, we don't think in terms of liberation. We educate ourselves in terms of integration. We want to
Yeah.
qualify for jobs instead of create jobs.
Right.
We want to, because we want to show everybody that we're smart too. I'm just like you. And I think to some degree we're going to have to create a more competitive spirit in our children and in our people, to where we're not going to school to love everybody and to get along with everybody. We're going to school, I guess, give our children an overarching nationalistic goal,
Without a doubt.
to where we're not pushing them to anything, but that we bring them up in a culture that values education and that
Yes.
values trades and that values
And
science. That we become the tellers of our own stories again. We create our own heroes. And so, like, I love the Black Panther. I know the Black Panther was created by a black man, and just the effects of that, the fact that T'Challa is a scientist and that Shuri is an engineer and that black
yeah.
kids are seeing that's powerful,
That
and
is.
we've got to become a culture that values sciences and education. And so, because I'm an 80s baby, so I was in high school in the 90s. So when I was going to high
Yeah.
school, the big things was you'd always see white kids, competing with each other in terms of education, but black kids were always we're worried about what we're wearing and stuff. And any black child that
Yeah.
dared to use their brain and dared to be in sciences was ridiculed to no end. And that's something we've got to stop. We've got to start valuing educated black people to the point, and I'm not talking about the ones who stick their noses up at us or anything, but black people who aspire to be engineers and stuff. We've got to support them more. We've
Yeah.
got to create a reading literate black people, because that I
Yeah.
think that's one of the biggest problems as to why we're not really technologically savvy if we haven't been to school with it, is because we're not a reading people. Simply,
Yes.
I mean, you look at all of the tech publications online, just all this. You could get the knowledge of an associate's degree just by googling stuff, and we don't
You
do
get
it.
a you get PhD level knowledge on in the sciences. No, I'm
Mhm.
dead serious. Or just by online. I mean, I
Mhm.
always told people, and we're gonna get back to the discussion of infrastructure.
Mhm.
But this, what we discuss, plays is extremely important in terms of creating a culture of science amongst Black people, and that it is more important, I say, to, you know, encourage the passions for science and learning, because everybody who's discussed, you know, with respect to this discussion we had with incorporating different elements of engineering, technology, and science, just brainstorming the possibilities of what can be done, on just not even like, we didn't even let our imaginations really go to work in terms of we having a huge nation in the place and what is the society like. And I just, you know, just from limiting the discussion just to a small plot of land, all the passions that were discussed, brainstorming and things of that sort. So that's why I say it's always important in respect to, you know, there comes to another element of nationhood is the education system, in terms of how are you going to educate people to have more passion for the subject than to say what the current education system is, especially for Black people. Because Albert Einstein said, what is it, imagination is more important than knowledge, and that was pretty much true.
Yeah, but I think that goes back to what I said earlier. We got to create a culture, because I think your culture educates you, and I'm not gonna say by osmosis, but almost by default, man. Your children kind of fall in the line. I mean, you look at the Japanese when, you know, Baron Tanaka took the youth of the Japanese, and, you know, he told them, just pointed at each one of them, you know, engineering for you, oceanography for you. And the Japanese created a culture that valued those things. And if you look at their culture, you know, they have singers, they have basketball players and stuff, but at the heart of all of it is a hunger for knowledge that will maintain their society. And that's what we have to create, because we're too into trying to integrate with people, and that's where our efforts go. When you make the motivation integration and loving everybody else, that's where your action goes. That's where your energy goes. And so that's where I feel that and I'm not trying to say hate anybody, but we need to understand that we are competing with other people, and in that mindset, in that framework, we have to work to, I guess, create overarching goals that will work to the benefit of maintaining a nation. I guess that's why we're here. Is, you know, one of the baseline goals of the BAIO is to create a nationhood mindset, because we don't have that.
Exactly. Minister, you were going to say something?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Well, you know, I mean, and I appreciate the example that he gave to bring it to a more hood, kind of simpler way. The fact of the matter is, ratchet parents make ratchet children.
Yeah.
And educated parents make educated children. If your children see you get up in the morning and you're reading books, guess what? Your children are going to get up in the morning and read books.
Yeah, exactly.
If the first thing your children see you do when you get up in the morning is light a clip, bust open a 40, and sit on your porch, it's quite natural that they're going to do the same thing. So we as parents, and I got 5 children, I'm pretty sure all of y'all got children, but we as parents have to start becoming the example that the children want to follow by us being the kind of people that, it's like, I'll give you a for instance. I was talking to my daughter about something just the other day.
Hello?
Yeah, someone's mic is clicking.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I'm back.
Hey, what's up?
Peace, Holip.
Finally.
Sorry about that. Minister, finish your thought. Sorry about that.
I was going to say, so my daughter, I was talking to my daughter about something, and I was talking about somebody that was looking for a relationship. And so my daughter started diagramming how Venus was going into Scorpio and then Libra. She's got the same spiritual analytical mind that I got. You know what I'm saying? She's 15 years old.
Yep. If she has any, teach her computer programming real quick. Like, have her go along with you when you like do when you wire up a home system. Because I love those posts you put up when you do the security systems. I'm like, man, that's sick. I mean, because I'm not sure. One day we're gonna have a show just featuring you in security systems, because you know security is extremely important for African people in general. But you know, even our detractors, the really paranoid people who could benefit from that show. So that's something we definitely need to do in the future. But go ahead, Minister, finish that. You mentioned how your daughter was sort of analytical as you were, because she sees it in her father every day.
Exactly. And to go on that point real quick, I don't want to take up all your time, but my contribution, I guess, to this show would be this. As we begin to move into securing our neighborhoods with future technology, the reason why I brought up artificial intelligence is that what they are now doing is they're equipping all security processes with a form of artificial intelligence. Even the camera at the edge of your house is going to be able to think for itself. Now, already, most cameras that you buy today, they have their own IP address, which means that it's a functional network device. And what they're doing is they're starting to equip the DVR or the NVR, which is network video recorder or digital video recorder, respectively. They're equipping these devices with the artificial intelligence to count people, to count license plates, to count faces, and things like that. So when you go into an airport, you are subject to some of the highest technology that we have available in surveillance, because they have a database with all those terrorists at those airports. And every camera that you come under is swapping databases to see if you are that guy. So that way, so people think, oh, well, you know, because here's the political lie in America. We're fighting them over there, so we don't have to fight them over here. That's bullshit. That's bullshit. We are fighting them over here every single day. It's just that they don't tell you that, because all of the video surveillance equipment, like, think about it this way. When you got to register to become an American citizen, they take your thumbprints. That's what's called biometrics. Biometrics is the combination of two different disciplines. Metric, of course, being mathematics, and bio, of course, being either science or technology.
And you know, and I want to focus on it just before we get Holip in here. Why it isn't, and this extrapolates to why this discussion is so important in terms of, you know, bringing science to the forefront of our efforts. Any sort of African, any sort of African empowerment effort is because science is the language of the universe. I mean, it's as simple as this: the most technologically advanced nation, or the most technologically adept nation, or the most scientifically disciplined nation wins. Plain and simple. Everything from the quality of life you give your people to the quality of protection your people have is solely contingent on your proficiency in the sciences. And with that, Holip, I know you had some technical difficulties, but welcome to the show.
Boy, you have no idea.
Peace, Holip.
Peace, everybody. Yeah, man. Y'all just keep going, man. I didn't even have to be here. I'm just listening.
Oh, thanks. No problem. But I want to bring this discussion back to the initial sort of scenario in hand. So we have this, you know, plot of land, and say, for example, we got a few buildings up, we got an energy source. Let's talk about another part of, you know, sort of having a sustainable community. That is, of course, the economy, in terms of what we sell, in terms of how we generate income, so we can build on this infrastructure that we have. Because let's face it, we're not living in La La Land. Everything we seek to purchase, rather it be a generator or either materials to build our own generators, let's say from this Tesla storage units for electricity. And I want to talk to Brother Dotta about that. Comparing Tesla stuff to Caterpillar stuff requires money. And one of the things that a community could do, and I always like to start from the bare minimum. So if I would just like to put that disclaimer out there, anytime you have a sort of a conversation with Neo, I'm going to start from bare basics. So say, for example, let's pretend we don't have any sort of products to sell at this moment. One of the industries that I love to talk about, which is my baby, and assuming you have connection to the internet, is the process of online trading, i.e., whether you're trading Forex options, Bitcoin, or doing online-based businesses. Peace, sister. Welcome. Hey, how you doing? What I want to discuss is the application. All right, already automatically leapfrogging us into the knowledge-based economy, because I think the biggest sector of the economy in the world does not even make a product or physically exist. It's this exchanging of information and the use of information. Brothers, I want to get your sort of view on this. How important it is to have for this new black, for the BAIO and its members, because we're just gonna pretend the nation's not here right now. For the BAIO and its members to be plugged in the knowledge-based economy, i.e., you're using your knowledge to trade the markets, develop intellectual products such as arts and design, engineering, or you're developing systems. How important it is for our members to get plugged into this economy immediately, and how can we utilize the income from said economy to sort of leverage that to build more physical infrastructure? Anybody answer?
I think from the outstart, we're going to have, like you said, we're going to have to kind of plug and play into whatever economic situation we go into, whether it be more of a capitalistic or whatever. That's not the point. We're going to have to, I think the key thing is to show the host country or the country where we want land at how we can benefit their economy, and from there they're more willing to help us, and we'll have we can create a tax base from that. Because coming up with an economic philosophy all of it in itself, I don't have the mind for that. I don't know how that works. I don't know how we would set up trade. I think we would just have to play by the rules of Rwanda or wherever we start out at.
I'll give you an example. All right, brother, this Ali I'm talking about, right?
Yes.
This Ali I'm talking to? All right. Say, for example, you have your knowledge base consists of networks, right? And communication. So, for example, we move to another country. You don't have network, systems with you or anything like that, but you do have knowledge of how to set up networks. What I'm going at with this is that, say, for example, rather than you set up networks, but have sort of a consulting operation, so to speak, where you can tell people how to do things. Because one of the biggest areas of business is people telling other people what to do when they don't know what to do. So, for example, we're just going to say that alone. You have sort of a consulting company. We set it up for you, and you tell the Rwandan government or any other governments around you, if you're going to size up your networking systems, right, you're going to set up your nodes, your fiber optic cables, this and the third, this is what you're going to need, how you're going to need it, blah, 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 this and the third, and you pretty much charge them a fee. My personal baby is, of course, Forex trading. I don't know if you buy this product, because I mentioned it in every show. For example, if I go over there, I'm going to go over there simply with a laptop, connection to the internet, and basically trade the markets, euro dollar versus US dollar, pretty much just suck money out of the markets and, just invest that money. I suck out of portions of that money I suck out of the markets into other areas. So I could add to Rwanda's tax base. I could fund schools, things of that sort. Basically, people just taking their knowledge and making money off of it. What I see is that, how the BAIO is going to actually get into the continent. And just from my perspective, in terms of what I'm going to do, I got to put that disclaimer. Oh, I forgot to mention the disclaimer. These are our opinions and not those of the BAIO. I forgot to do that at the beginning of the show. But no, going by the BAIO's motto is that everybody pursue their passion towards a common goal. This is my thing. If I were to go there, let's say if I bring 10 people, you bring 10 people, Minister brings 10 people, and his field is, electronic surveillance. He'll pretty much have that place wired up so that not even every mosquito would have its face imprinted and know what's going on. But just bringing in our passions to the group. If I were to bring a group of day traders in and we were able to, every month bring in suck $2 million out of the market and take a piece of that and just build to the infrastructure. How important is that a process of leveraging what we know and what our passions are in the process of nation building? Because that's what I wanted to drive home to particularly members who are just joined and don't know what to do.
I want to jump in on that one.
Yes, please do so.
I want to jump in on that one. Okay, so for me, and again, like the Queen Esther would say, the views and opinions do not resemble.
Yes, we gotta all get that
my radio shows.
Yes.
Word up. But listen, in every nation, in every economy, you have those who want to be at the top and those who are comfortable being at the bottom. And
yes.
we have to definitely acknowledge that eventuality. Not everybody is going to be a STEM all-star. And so,
of course not.
Something happened a couple of weeks ago that Big Brother Collar brought up, and I thought it was a beautiful thing to talk about. He said that he got emailed by an older sister who loved the BAIO, but she didn't think that she would be able to, you know what I'm saying, contribute to the scientific discussion. And I want you brothers and sisters who are listening to understand that you don't have to be in science, technology, engineering, mathematics to want to be a member of Afrikan or the satellite community. Because as a person who's going to be, and I ain't even going to lie to you, as a person who's going to be at the top of the security field, I understand that in order to put security in place, there's people at all levels that don't need it. So in other words, like our good brother Ali, if he's putting in the network, then you need somebody to pull a cable. Am I right, brother?
Yes. Yep.
So therefore, now in our industry and in his industry, the people that pull a cable will at least amount of smart to keep it on with you. So therefore, if you just
background noise.
Yeah, no, I don't know who that is.
Somebody has to say there's somebody. It sounds like somebody's bowling in the background. If you're at a bowling alley, I'm jealous of you right now. Go ahead.
Word up, I can throw back a couple myself. But and so therefore, in my industry, pulling cable requires the least amount of intelligence. And then there's mounting stuff that doesn't requires a middle level of intelligence. And then there's programming. So in every industry that we have, there's different levels of commitment and different levels of intelligence and work ethic that's required. I hope that by the second and third generation, that the culture, as Brother Ali was talking about, that as we create that culture, we will advance our people enough that everybody wants to at least be an intermediate kind of person. You understand what I'm saying, Neil? So in other words, almost everybody wants to at least excel at what they're doing. But I think that some of the reasons why people don't want to excel is that living in a racist country like the one that we're in, it sort of kills self-esteem to the point where you think that you're not good at math. But who told you wasn't good at math? Who told you wasn't good at science? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's
you never tried it.
Exactly. For me, I always thought that I was bad in math until I joined the nation. And then when I came in the nation and they talked all this black people is beautiful, stuff like that, and I heard that and I internalized it, my confidence grew, and I was like, well, what was the problem with me and all of these numbers? And I didn't get the exit. You know what I'm saying? And I realized that what I realized is that low intelligence or IQ has nothing to do with how you're born and everything to do with how you feel about yourself. So creating a nation and satellite communities built on love of black people solves a whole lot of problems.
It does. It does.
I like that.
It does.
So
yes, please.
So here's how I look at it for the most part. Like everybody like that says that, you know, I can't contribute to it. You got to look at it from, like, you could look at it two ways. You could look at it as parents of something that we're giving birth to, or you can look at it from a military perspective. Now you go through military basic training, we just being taught the basics of how to survive. When you are raising kids, you are teaching kids the basics of speech, eating, and all this good stuff, putting your clothes, tying your shoes on. Now, once you go to school and then advance your understanding of all of the stuff that you're learning, then and in turn, that kid or that military personnel that advances inside of that organization, they will be actually supposed to come better than the parent. So if we start this off, we are supposed to say, okay, we are gathering the best that we have right now. So within 10 to 15 years, that knowledge or that the people that that comes behind us is supposed to say, you know what, they started this out, so we can actually advance. And you know, as technology gets bigger and better, they supposed to adopt those new.
Hey, brother, we're losing you.
Oh, me? You losing me?
You were in and out. Something.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay. I'm not sure what the last thing they said that y'all heard, but what I was saying was building on the generation that comes behind us is supposed to take the technology that we have or the technology out there and make it better. So we can't be stagnated. So if we're just going to be the only generation that's looking at this and don't pass this knowledge down to our kids, just the basic stuff, and what kind of idea they're going to have to how can they see themselves in the future as far as being a leader or a scientist or an engineer and so on and so forth. But like I said, most of the stuff that Minister Wu talked about is just like a great example of how it like transformed itself into like, damn, I am great. Okay, now you look at things better. You look things in a different light. Whereas when I grew up, I was always like, damn. I had all the stigmas going on, I don't want to be too dark, or I don't want to learn science, even though I was in a science class and I did a science project. I kind of ran away from it, but now I wish I would stay there. So, it's kind of one of those things that we just have to make sure that our talented people that we do have out there, we don't send them out to actually make the other person better. Kind of like how Holip, his introduction is, why is everything that we do makes white men
it's your stream. I think you're buffering. You good?
Oh.
You're buffering. It's like I'm getting like every other sound.
I hear the brother though.
Is it good?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I hear you.
All right, good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh no, I was just saying that that intro that Holip has on his when he does his shows, why is everything that we do makes that person better? That white man better. It's
why does the black man?
Right.
Yeah.
But instead, why can't we implement that same thing? Let's send them out to get the education, but make sure that they come back to help us improve. You know what I'm saying? Instead of us, people at 67. Instead of people 60, 70 years old still trying to, lift the people up on their backs, it's time for a rest. I ain't getting younger either. So
and it's funny you should mention that. And I want to speak what Minister Dawood mentioned earlier about the woman who said, I can't contribute anything scientifically to the BAIO. One of the things I've learned in being a person who has a learning disability, I've learned some of the best teachers are people who aren't good at, picking up things, but when they learn it, they know how to communicate it because they know how to break it down. Right. What I tell people, particularly BAIO members, if you're hearing this discussion and you're thinking, okay, you're intimidated by some of the information you may be intimidated by some of the information we're putting out, or you're thinking, okay, I don't know anything about laying down cables, I don't know anything about networks. You do have 3 pounds of matter in between your ears. You can learn something. Like you said, there's tons of free resources out there to learning STEM. Anything from a basic algebra class, division, mathematics, you can learn that. And if you don't think you can contribute to this effort, you're wrong, because guess what? You can teach small children.
Oh my God! Let me jump in on that, Neil, just for a second.
Yes.
Brothers and sisters, you got people who are going to teach you that. You got people who love you and they're going to teach you that. This is not the world you're coming from. This is a place where I want to see you learn that. So I'm going to make sure that when we finally get everything together and everything is organized, you're going to have a teacher in me. First of all, if there's one thing I know how to do, I know how to teach. God damn it.
Yes, you
do. I'm going to make sure you can get it. You know what I'm saying? That's a gift my dad gave me. Is not only when I learn it, you going to learn it. Because, excuse me, I taught many men to be ministers. I taught many women how to speak. And so, therefore, when it comes down to security and stuff like that, you got to remember, you're coming from a world, let's just be honest, people who don't want you to know, more than black people. Because in this world that you're living in this country you're living in, When you meet, and I know both of y'all can bear witness to me, when you meet somebody that does the same thing you do, they give you that crazy look, which is, oh, nigga, you gonna take away my distinction as being the only black person that does this and that?
Yep.
That's what they are. Rarely, if ever, will you meet a black person who will say, oh, shoot, you do networking? That's what's up. Take my phone number. Very rarely will you meet the people like that. 9 times out of 10, you're going to meet somebody that's going to give you a crazy look, and you're going to say, brother, me and you, we should get together and start our own company. They're going to look at you like, nigga, I'm the only black locksmith in my town. I'm not about to move over let another person come over here. And you do not know how many times I ran into that.
Yep.
Yeah, that goes back to creating. I just want to say that just goes back to creating a culture. You know, black children have to see black people cooperating with each other. They got to see us trusting each other. Yes. They have to see. There's so many things that a culture can do, man. If we create a culture where we value even the littlest thing, I think that's the one thing that would scare people away from the BAIO is like you guys said, they don't feel they can contribute anything. Yeah. So if we put a value on street sweeping, you know, make almost a priesthood of street sweepers, shoe repairmen. You know, Dr. John Henrik Clarke, I don't know when the lecture was. I saw it on YouTube. He was like, he can't even find a good black woodworker. You know, he can't even find a good black coffin maker. You know, we need everybody to do everything. This is a nation. This isn't coming in, plug and play, you know, just lounge and live. Every hand has to move. Every hand has to work. You know, so we have to start valuing even little stuff, because one of the things, like I like what Tariq Nasheed said one time. We suffer from the plantation psychology of prestige, where we want to do the glamorous stuff, and we give props to stuff that we think is going to make us look good. We don't look at a business owner and say, "Damn, man, support them and everything," but we'll give respect and props to somebody who gets on or gets a token partnership at a law firm, or gets some kind of job from a white person. But we don't celebrate our own accomplishments and everything that we do. We got to start pushing our children into trades, and we got to make those trades just as important and put just as much emphasis on that as we would somebody working at CNN.
Exactly. And I say that, one of the most important things for us as black, progressive-minded black people, what is the expression, hold up, what is the expression used? Progressive black nationalists? What we should do in terms of us, in terms of our small circle do, is sort of elevate even the simplest things that we do. I mean, if one of us even, learns how to do calculus, that's a major achievement for the whole group. Why? Even though it's a small thing in the grand round, that's one person who didn't know calculus before. You celebrate these small incremental steps, towards the greater goal. Because as long as I'd rather us moving forward slowly than not moving forward at all. And you mentioned before, like you said, like we don't glamorize. We have this weird idea of what we glamorize and what we don't glamorize. For example, we were mentioning before, like when we were talking about the sewer treatment system, and I mentioned that, when I saw the show where we worked with a sewer worker, I said, I'm glad I don't have to do that job, but I'm grateful for the people who do.
Right.
Understand this. Right. If everyone wanted to be a reality star and no one wanted to work the sewers, I guarantee you everyone in that community would be dead of cholera. So
without a doubt, brother.
You have to understand, have a holistic approach. And what I love about the BAIO is that we don't downplay anybody's sort of passions, because we understand the role of what Nationhood is. Nationhood is a group of individuals operating and appreciating a common goal. Nationhood is not a group of individuals being forced to conform to what the major group thinks. That's why I always say, and I always repeat, if your passion is drawing, if your passion is brewing beer, by the way, I want to do that with one of these days, brewed beer, and he'll probably tell you because I talk about it all the time. He'll talk about it. If your passion is network engineering, your passion is day trading, we encourage you to be the best at your passion, because guess what? Passion moves people. Yes. And especially when you have young black children, the next generation coming over, passion wins over children. Can sense what you're passionate about. They're not dumb. They're not stupid. I guarantee you, if you have a child and you're a mathematician, right, and he sees you every day on your board working out equations, just into it, you're in that perpetual flow state, he's going to think differently about mathematics. If he sees you working on your car every day, you're just in that flow state, and you're just, you're going at it. He or she's going to be interested in the cars. If you're baking, if you, even if you're cleaning a septic tank. Now, if you're cleaning a septic tank, I don't advise you to have your children around because it's a health hazard. But you get my point. If you are passionate about what you are passionate about, and that's one thing we hammer at the BAIO, pursue your passions. We'll do whatever you love. And I was telling that older sister, like Minister Dawood mentioned, I mean, whatever you could do. I mean, I know an older woman. In fact, I went to junior because she had a homeschool cooperative, and I went to her school in junior high. So basically, pretty much, she put us in her house. It was like 8 of us, and she educated me. That changed my life. I would not be thinking the way I think today if not for that opportunity. So for all the older members of the BAIO who think that they have nothing to contribute, believe it or not, your ability to be with children, your ability to, just teach, to take, to sort of, communicate stuff, and you can always learn something. I don't believe in that whole thing where you can't teach an old dog new tricks. No, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Science proves it. So learn something, and what you learn, you teach.
Neil, how about this? How about the incredible amount of money it costs for daycare? If you're an older woman or a man, you being able to supervise as well as teach the babies is that's worth more than anything we talk about on this show.
Exactly.
Because daycare now, I don't know if y'all know, but the average cost of daycare is $250 a week.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's expensive. Yeah, and especially if
groceries,
it's so yep. And it's so weird. You gave us a new idea for a new BIO-based business. A daycare center. Especially if you get your certs and CPR and all that other stuff, you really get hammered out. Why? Because you got a lot of young black couples today. I'm not just going to say it on the women because they've proven that live. Black men being absentee fathers. I know a lot of young brothers in their kids' lives. But you got a young black couples, who need people to watch children and things of that sort. Because I look at, one of the main things we do at the BAIO is we look at the situation for what it is, and we hammer out solutions from a place of love. Okay? One of the things we do is we love our people. Like, you have some people who will look at the situation and call these people bastard baby makers or thugs, this, that, and that. We look at them as, and that shit pisses me off. That's why I don't listen to certain people.
Me too.
And whereas we in the BIO, we look at a situation where, you have a young man, a young woman, 20 and 21. They have a baby together. They didn't get much out of their high school education. They both got diplomas. But we all know if you're young and black and you went to an American public high school, you didn't really learn shit that's useful to you. Where do we go from here? Let's say, for example, because I'm living in New York City and I see this a lot, they both take up jobs as security guards because that's all you need to get. Or if you're lucky, or if you're smart enough, you got a civil service job and you make more. What does this person need first? What does this person need first, and how can we introduce this person to the BIO based on how we can meet that need? That's how BAIO thinking works. That's how it works. We look at
and let me jump in on what you're saying, Neil, for a second. I'm sorry.
No problem.
But I got to tell the story. Okay, so people ask me all the time, like, what made you want to get into security? And I tell people all the time, when I was younger, I wanted to be a comic artist. However, my dad used to be a roll car inspector for the TA, Transit Authority in New York City.
Wow. RCI, baby.
Yep, exactly. So my dad would take me sometimes on his road service calls. and my dad got me a little wallet with a fake badge. So whenever we would go by the you know how where you got to get your token or whatever, whenever we go by there, my dad would show his badge, I would show my badge. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, you a transit brat as well? I'm a transit brat too. I didn't even
Without
know
a doubt, brother. Without a doubt. So for me, it was like, you know, it was like just being like my dad. So then after that, what would happen is that, you know, my dad's nighttime moonlighting job was his locksmith business. So whenever I got off of work, we would change, and then we would go around. My dad would survey somebody's house, and he would have me take everything down on my pad. So this is the way he got me into doing what he was doing. So when the whole comic artist thing petered out, I still had a love for all the stuff that he did, and it was natural for me to transition into that. Now fast forward to me being an adult. When I used to be on call on the weekend, all three of my children at different times, my oldest, my middle, who's my son, and my youngest, they have all gone on jobs with me to unlock houses, to put in deadbolts, to fit keys to cars, especially cars that have the chip in the head of them. So now, even though my oldest wants to be an architect, my middle child, which is my son, he wants to come in my industry. He has no desire to go to college. He wants to come into my industry. And he's like, Dad, what do I need to do? So we're working on that right now. But the point is if you drop the seed on your children when they're younger, they're going to grow up with that seed in their heart. The Bible says, train up a child in the way of the Lord, and he won't depart from it. And so we have to begin to look at the next generations in that way. So I guess to bring it full circle, if you got an older woman or older man and they say, well, I don't know what I can do, hold up. How many men and women have to leave their children with ratchet-ass people while they go to work every day? And then their children learn these bad behaviors and attitudes and things like that. But if we're leaving our children with a BAIO mother or a BAIO father, can you imagine the kind of children that we're going to have?
Of course.
It's like, it's invaluable.
And imagine, I mean...
I think I'm breaking up, man.
No, you're good.
And imagine, like, for example, I mean, that's another thing that, you know, the importance of mentoring and spending time with people. And, you know, like, that's what I love about this organization. And, of course, it's a plug for the BAIO, is that we are an organization... because we understand that we are people. We're human beings. You know, we're not just robots. We're not monolithic like this we don't ascribe to this idea that we're going to be one monolithic black race or one monolithic group of people in that sort. So that's amazing. I mean, how you tie in everything. And one of the things I love to tie in, and this deals with STEM as well. What I love about, you know, STEM, field of science, you know, technology, especially engineering, is how scalable it is. So, for example, in science, something that works on the micro level is going to work on the macro level. It's just levels of complexity in between it. So, for example, like we mentioned the small hydroelectric plant or small solar field. You know, you can have a solar system that powers a house or a city. The difference is between a house and a city is more complex. The same thing goes, and we apply that to BAIO philosophy. You know, we have an idea of a nation, of what our nation is going to be like. But we are so pragmatic that we can pull that idea down to the smaller level. For example, we have an idea of how our citizens are going to interact with each other, how our education system is going to be. And in levels, even in your personal life, we can shrink that down to your personal life. For example, how Minister and I, we discussed, and all four of us discussed how you can sort of, you know, incorporate people who don't think they're useful and give them ideas of how they can contribute to our stuff. For example, like, you know, we let people know, like, you know, you are just as vital as the engineer, or you have something to contribute. So that's something I just love. I just wanted to get that point on.
Oh, yeah. Because, I mean, at some point in nation building, one of us is going to stand up and look at Minister DeWood and say, you know what I could go for? An ice cold beer. You know, exactly. You're going to need somebody for everything. You're going to need somebody to drive the trash. You're going to need drivers. You're going to need truck drivers. You're going to need delivery people. You're going to need bartenders. You're going to need all of that. And we got to emphasize the importance of all of that. That way people can feel like they can directly contribute. Because a sister can look at that and say, well, shoot, I can wait tables, or I can fry some chicken or something.
Hello? Hello? I mean, for example, and it goes to the next phase that we discussed. And, like, for example, like, we started off the show with this small plot of land in not Liberia. That's Holip's favorite pet project. No, that's Kyle's pet project, Liberia. If he's listening, he'll probably chime in on that. But in Rwanda, like, say, for example, we have this sort of resort thing, this sort of resort bed and breakfast thing. It's powered by the stream, the solar and everything. You got all the lights on. It's conditioned, air conditioned, everything else. You know, you're gonna have, you know, people to serve, you know, people to take care of the place. I mean, you know, everybody plays a role, and that's a big important thing. Hold up, are you listening? You still there?
You still there?
Yo,
no, I'm here. I'm here. I'm just on mute.
Oh, good.
Yo,
I'm surprised.
I want to veggie back on what you just said, just real quick, you know, because I don't want anybody to get any misconception. Sisters, that doesn't mean that we want you in the nation just to wait on tables.
Exactly. It's a
we know
temporary situation.
We know there's a lot of you out there that have brilliant minds, and you could contribute to the science, technology, engineering, and math. As a matter of fact, what's her name? Sister Kashi, commonly known as I Love Lucy. That sister designed her own sewage or disposal situation.
What? Oh, she needs to be up. We need to have her on.
she's actually in Ghana right now, bro.
Oh, yeah. I talked to her. Yeah, actually, I talked to her about I had some working with one of the guys at Caterpillar who used to actually design the what do you call it? The trash. This I can't think of it. Damn, running a blank. But yeah, I talked to her, and she said she's going to get the information and she's going to come back. But yeah, she's a good sister, man. So like I said, everything ties into each other because you need the construction and the engineers to figure this stuff out. And like you said, you know, everybody think that you need to be this big boss up there, or the head person with all the brains to think about everything to actually do the work. When in fact that it takes the actual laborers and workers to complete the job. It's just the person putting the plans together, and we just executing what the plan was put down. All the mathematics and all that stuff has been already hashed out, so we don't have to do. We have to do little to no thinking about, you know, how many degrees this need to be or that. You know what I'm saying? It's already hashed out. We just need to put the work.
Let me ask everybody something. Do you think that one of the biggest problems with us is that we think that we need to do everything ourselves? We think we're not comfortable with somebody knowing more than we do.
Yes. I think that is a huge problem. And I'm going to extrapolate on that. I think that ties into our insecurities that we have as a people. Because let's face it, if you live in black and you lived up in America, you're going to get hit with some stuff. You're always made to feel insecure, especially if you're constantly in the media, if you watch TV a lot, because you see, you know, all your heroes are white or another color. So you get away from that. You go online and look at anime. Now all your heroes are Japanese. So you see everything that is not you, where you are constantly convinced that you are not capable of doing anything. And when you become capable of doing something, you have, you know, a predetermined mindset. If you see a non-black person doing something better than you, you just accept it as the way it is. Whereas if you see a black person doing something better than you, you accept it as competition. Because that also ties to another aspect of our culture as black people. We are, and I can't stress this enough, we compete against each other a lot and far too much. And, you know, everybody says that, from the conscious community on to the basically, you know, conscious enough coon. They recognize that we compete against each other or not. And what has to be fostered is this new idea of black cooperation, so to speak.
Yes, brother. Just like Brother Ali was saying. Yes.
Yes.
I want to jump into this. If this conversation was double Dutch, I'm jumping in right now because I got to. I got to speak on this.
Yes.
The problem with the not working together is a structural problem. Bell is reading a book that I read a long time ago called The Art of Systems Thinking. And the one thing that I took away from that book, probably the most important thing that I took away from that book, is that the purpose of a system is to maintain itself. That's its purpose. So when you hear the political system, it's not to fix anything politically, it's to maintain a political system. If you hear the medical system, it's for there to be a medical system perpetually. It's not about fixing anything. A police system is not about fixing anything. It's about maintaining that particular system. So when you look at the way that we are here in America, when you really think about it, us wanting to hoard knowledge and be that special Negro is a natural, organic conclusion of being here.
True indeed, bro.
Because you have to compete with white people, you got to compete with your own people to be the special nigga, because there's a lot of special niggas that you're competing with. Why? Because we're all looking at it within the context of working for white people. But you take us out of that structure, the problem is solved.
Yes, it is, my brother. And
so it's a structural, at the end of the day, it's a structural infrastructure problem. It's the fact that we're fucking here is what the problem is.
I agree.
And you know, it's so very interesting you should mention that, because now I have an idea. Since systems have been engineered to work against us, the next phase is, and since we're talking about engineering a system that works for us. So the BAIO system, i.e., this thing where a system devoted to land infrastructure nationhood that is designed to perpetuate itself.
Bingo.
That's gonna be the next big phase. Because this thing, it's not enough to just have, you know, the BAIO as an organization. We need the BAIO system, such that if tomorrow all of us were on a plane and it crashed and we all died, this thing continues going on.
Exactly.
So
and the only way you're going to get that is if you have people that putting the concern of their people above the concern of themselves. And this is why I'm just going to give you a little sneak preview. And I spoke to Neil about this, and I wanted to speak to Minister too. But one of the things that I'm going to address, I'm putting it together now because it's probably going to be my next thing that I address, is that everybody keeps saying we all need to work together. The problem with that is not everybody at the table is an honest player. And I want to address that because it sounds beautiful. Oh, well, you know, I know we all doing the same thing. All we got to do. No, we're not doing the same thing. No, we don't want the same thing.
We all have to be.
And this is why the BAIO's messaging is the way that it is because of this vagary bullshit that we've been dealing with for years. No, we don't all want the same thing. Let's get that straight.
Right.
Because most of these people out here talking this bullshit, it's just coming up with show topics. They don't want a nation. So if I'm going to sit at the table with a dishonest player, well, his agenda is nowhere in the vicinity of what I'm doing. So this is why we came up with this conclusion. Let's deal with people of like mind, people who want nations like us. And let's stop trying to convince clowns and buffoons, or even if they're not clowns and buffoons, just people on a different path than us. You go your way and you do that. Leave us alone so that we can get with all of these people, of these African-centered progressives and these black nationalists and people that want their own nation, and we can build amongst each other. That's it.
I agree.
That's the working together that I want to do. But this, as far as this kumbaya stuff with the conscious community, get the fuck out of here.
Exactly.
But that goes to your point, Holip. Like you said, like if something happened to one of us, you know, the mission will still go on, and we kind of refer to it as train the trainer. So if I'm the guy who has all this knowledge and I'm passing down this information, hey, this is how you set up your construction site. This is how you do this. This is how you do that. I'm no longer needed there because guess what? That person I just taught is going to do the same thing. He's going to train someone else and keep it going. You know what I'm saying? So there's no need.
Exactly. You make nationhood viral.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You make it viral. The other way is you want it like a web instead of a chain. Because if you chain, you break one link, the whole thing collapses. A web, you break a link, it still remains.
Yeah.
So
it's a high-minded, it's a high concept, because see, this is what most people, and Minister can relate to this. Most people think when we don't address social issues that we're not about morality and proper behavior. It's the opposite of that. What it is that it's a waste of time trying to control people's behavior if you don't control the context.
Exactly.
So you want me to have a parade and go into a Tasmanian devil fit over every negative thing that black folks is doing in this society? I would, first of all, I wouldn't have time for nationhood because I'd be worn out.
Exactly.
Why not trust?
Yeah.
Like, all right, perfect example. And I posted this on the thing, when Captain America is having this conversation with Tony Stark, and he says, "You're not the type of guy that'll make the sacrifice. You won't let the guy. You won't lay down on a wire and let the guy come over you." And Tony Stark said, "Yeah, I just cut the wire." You see what I'm saying? It's a difference in mentality. It's like he's constantly thinking, how can I efficiently solve this problem without sacrificing?
Yep. And that's the thing. And that's the problem, is that every other nation thinks like that. Is a very interesting. I saw years ago a commercial for the Navy SEALs, and it says, and this struck out my mind. This pretty much shaped my way of thinking. He says, "You're not supposed to die for your country. Make your enemy die for his." So right then and there, it entrained into the mind of your average young white male. Let's be honest, the Navy SEALs and the U.S. military is geared towards them. Of how to properly use your energies as a people, how to use your people, how valuable your people are, and that was something that I really, got out of that. And that's something we have to really put forward, with respect to this nationhood process, the efficient management of resources and of human resources as well. And that's why, earlier in this topic, I discussed the purpose of efficiency. Now it's very interesting we should talk about this. Now I'm sort of honing in. I'm curious about systems engineering now, because Holip mentioned the purpose of a system, and I think that's probably the most important work that should be engaged in at this moment, with respect to the BAIO moving forward with its operations, whether it be acquiring land, whether it be acquiring skills and utilizing land and skills to acquire more and leveraging those to acquire more and build off of it. How do we develop this system that is the BAIO system? That is going to be the... Yes.
Oh, no, I was just saying, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but Marine Boani said something when she was talking about white supremacy as a system, that every institution is built to maintain the system. And that goes to what Holip was saying. The system is designed to maintain itself. So I think every business, everything has to support Afrikan.
Brother, I didn't hear any of that. Brother, you're in and out.
Can you hear me?
I think it's on your end, though, because
I can hear you.
Everybody else hear him.
You guys hear him very well?
Yeah.
Okay,
I was just
saying,
just piggybacking what you guys are saying. Everything we do has to support the nation, and I think that just goes back to creating a culture that will gear our children towards competing and towards, I guess, I don't want to say selfishness. I mean, I think but I do think that
putting ourselves first, there's nothing wrong with that at all.
I
mean, because
that's what I think. That's what I think we need to do, because everything we do, like Holip's beginning rant from Amos Wilson, everything we do benefits other people. I think we need to instill within ourselves, in everything that we're doing, like within our sciences and within our engineering, a nationalistic agenda has to be at heart. And I think that would contribute to the survival of Afrikan in general.
Exactly. It's so weird that everything we discuss ties into sort of building this system. From everybody where everyone's passions are tied into this land infrastructure nationhood agenda, infrastructure nationhood goal, where everybody from the comic book artist to the civil engineer who's building the major hydroelectric dam, or the commercial geothermal unit, which I wanted to discuss because that's like my baby in terms of sustainable energy. I love geothermal. I mean, but you know, just to keep this thing going, where to permeate the idea of land infrastructure nationhood is to, you know, just put it in the subconscious of every BAIO member and every person involved in our operations. That is like, you know, pretty much the goal. I mean, that's what really much separates us in that sense. Yeah, on that.
So, like what you were saying, like how, like for instance, what we was talking about, the example you gave about in Rwanda about, you know, what will we do, and for us to actually contribute to that society, to that nation, is like we can supply training to their locals to have this, to have that skill, because you don't necessarily need the academics that you will require in the States versus over in Africa. And then once we get the States on, then you will come up with a plan on a college or a technical level, you know. But for the most part, you're giving them the basic need of how to operate a piece of equipment to actually build a road, or actually to dig, or to hang wires. You know, you give them the basic understanding, or you know, you just pass that off to them. I think it will be highly, it'll be very useful for them, because I was talking to one of the brothers that Bill hooked me up with, and he was saying that, yeah, man, we need y'all over here. We need y'all skills, because y'all, you know, and I told him I was in the construction industry. And he was like, yeah, we have some construction workers, but, you know, we don't have enough. So this is why some of the roads that we have are not even built. You know, you know, he said it's people in China that's actually building the roads, that's, you know, training and doing all that stuff. So I'm like, well, shit, I've been, you know, I was an instructor for almost 4 years. And, you know, I got the skills, I can pass that on. And once that person get that on, I mean, I'm pretty sure it'll be something, it's a trade-off, you know, land for, you know, experience and skill.
And that education becomes systemic, because once our children see us, even, it doesn't have to be, that's what we got to get through our heads. It doesn't have to be on par with Europe. They just got to see us doing it. The onus will be on the youth to improve upon it. Like we don't have to have a satellite that's the same as the United States. All we got to do is just get up in space. Our children see us get up there, then they'll take it upon themselves to improve it. They'll take it upon themselves to make it better and to educate themselves. So I agree 100%. Like, just seeing Black people engage in that, seeing us going overseas and working with the brothers and sisters over there and lending our skills to them will create a culture of a nationalistic agenda, you know, and we'll redirect our energy. We won't be wanting to go work for Excel Energy anymore. We'll want to compete with them now. We'll want to start our own, because shoot, look at all this opportunity over here. I don't have to compete with white kids over here. If I go over here, and if I go to Rwanda and offer my skills there, I've been doing this for 4 or 5 years anyway. I'm much more valuable to Rwanda than I am to the United States.
Exactly.
And I think that kind of education becomes systemic and ingrained, and I think the children kind of grow into that. And I think that's the kind of rock we want to kick down the road for our kids to pick up.
Exactly. Yep. And it's so very interesting that you mentioned what will be the BAIO's advantage in Africa over, say, the Europeans or the Chinese, is that we have an interest in actually making sure that those nations do well, because we are a Black African infrastructure organization. It serves a myriad of purposes. One, where they benefit, you know, one, they get better training. Two, you have a partner who's actually interested in making sure you do well and wants to empower you. And three, they get to learn what it means to be Black from our perspective. Because I've listened to Brother Dinas's former video when he interviewed Kala Genesis, our major brother. And one of the things Kala touched on is that a lot of black Africans don't see themselves as black. They're their tribe first. They're their nation first. They're not black first. Meanwhile, the Chinese go over there, they're Chinese first. And that's how they have that level of unity. Meanwhile, you have a group like the BAIO, or African Americans, who, you know, coming into Africa from our perspective, understanding what racial loyalty is, what race perspective is, who see things through that prism of race because we know the world works that way. And we come in there and operate from a position of benevolence and position of empowerment, all the while letting our brothers and sisters on the continent know this is the true dynamic going on. Like, the Chinese are not here for you. They don't respect you or care about you in the way that we do. And more importantly, you know, you need to start seeing them differently than what you are seeing them, because they're not here to be partners with you. They're here to empower China, because they pretty much, like that movie Avatar. Remember when he explains the situation where they come into your world because they pretty much poison their world. Well, that's the same with China. China has pretty much poisoned its own environment. It's poisoned its own people. Now it's looking for something else to feed on. And it's very crucial that Africans on the continent get that message about them, in addition to what the Europeans do. I mean, pretty much every black person on the planet has some, like, who has any history class has known, you know, us and the Europeans weren't, you know, the best of friends forever. But I want to, you know, extrapolate on that. It's just why the BAIO, why it's so important that we go over there, not just, you know, sort of, you know, trying to preach to the people saying, hey, these people are bad, this, that, and the third. No, that we go over there showing people what the right way to do things is, and showing how, you know, we could put our talents and skills to better them and to teach them how to better them. Because, for example, what group of people teaches another people to have power? I mean, what is that in the background? Oh, no. I mean, what group of people go to another nation and teaches them, hey, this is how you empower yourself. This is how you make yourself better. This is how you use your resources better to make your nation better. No group does that. But, you know, we're going to be sort of the outlier in that we will do that. So I think that's very important that we, you know, keep that in mind as well. Exactly. Brother Holip, what do you got to say on this?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah. I think we should close out. I think we should leave him wanting more. Because we said, I mean, this was a good show. Lots of information. I mean, I can't wait to go back and listen to the archive.
Yeah, how long have we been on?
2 hours.
2 hours.
2 hours. Oh. Yeah.
Wow, it seemed like a few minutes. I mean, that's
always leaving wanting more. Oh, just what would you guys like to get into on the next show? I'm interested in that.
Personally, I'd like to get into medical.
Awesome.
And like kicking around like medical setups. Maybe we can get a nurse or one of our brothers and sisters who's a doctor and stuff, and see how that can be integrated. Yeah,
that's a good idea.
Yeah, I'm trying to get
really important in that area.
Yeah, I'm trying to get my sister. She's been like busy lately, trying to work her magic, but that's the speech pathologist though. And I was talking to her about, you know, how does everything operates, and I was telling about getting up with Bell and to do one, and how all of them integrate and how the system works as far as medically, and how she can actually she can work offline from Africa and with working somebody in the States. You know what I'm saying? So it's a very interesting topic though. I want to hear that.
A lot of things, like how can we set up a medical system that would benefit African Americans here, as well as brothers and sisters going to Afrikan? You know, because I'd like to hear something about that, because no, you're all right. I'd like to hear something about that, you know, in light of, you know, what we kick around as, you know, the conspiracies of the medical industry here or whatever, and what we could do, like how we could set up a medical industry that uses natural cures like opium and like marijuana, and you know, wherever everybody stands on that, but just even the medical technology, what's available to us to set up, you know, there.
I'll tell you this: you're not gonna have a friend in collar with the marijuana stuff, but we'll defend you on that one. It's like it was so funny. And like I remember a while ago post where Holip posted something on the benefits of marijuana or something like that, and he said Collar's gonna go into a Tasmanian devil when he hears about this. But that
and me and him always get into it on that because I'm like, oh, so you gonna ban alcohol too? Because you better not think about banning marijuana, and then you're gonna keep the bars open. So,
but you know, exactly.
We always get into it.
It's so very interesting about that area, and I'm glad you mentioned the medical marijuana scheme because as you know, Aretha Franklin passed of pancreatic cancer, and pretty much pancreatic cancer is a death sentence for anybody who gets it. And there have been actual studies, real studies, double-blind studies showing the effects of cannabis oil on, the remission of pancreatic cancer. So that's something definitely to consider. Also with medical, and I'm glad you mentioned that because that's something I wanted to discuss. Because I've been pondering that over the week in terms of dealing with certain medical issues. One of my big-time favorite issues to deal with is ADHD. It's very personal in my life, and it's very prevalent in the lives of many Black Americans, African Americans, and a lot of probably BAIO members. Like, because I struggle with this condition myself. I wanted to do a show on mental health, physical health, and I thought about even doing a segment just solely on my own discussing ADHD and things to do with it. Another thing you mentioned was that, dispelling the rumors and the myths about the medical industry, the modern medical industry as it is, where you have a lot of people who put out quack information and it's really hurting people. I've discussed this, I believe, on the last show where I discussed the situation with my father and he had his kidney problems and he listened to some guy and now he's no longer with us. So I think it's very good that we're going to have a BAIO medical show where we're going to have medical professionals on this. Let me tell you something, particularly if you're struggling with ADHD, those medications work. Let me tell you right now. I mean, because I'm like, if you've been diagnosed with it and you have, been prescribed Adderall and you take the Adderall, you realize it's like a light bulb goes off and you can get a lot of things done. You can think clearly, things of that sort. But I find it very important for our people to and it ties back into the purpose of this show with STEM. People, especially our people, need to really dispel the fear of science and mathematics and engineering, especially when the people who are using science and engineering and mathematics are using it against you. It's natural to fear it. It's like fire, right? If you're dealing with somebody who's constantly throwing fire at you and you're constantly getting burned, you're going to fear fire. But if you come to understand that you yourself can use that fire, then you will have a different view of that fire. So I think that's also very important. But I believe, a medical show, I think a medical segment should, that should be in that show. But I see that really segmenting off as to being its own area because it's so big, it's so vast, and it's so necessary, particularly on the continent. And if you're going to discuss anything with building an African nation or the African, you're going to have a medical system because it plays big into the economy. We don't know how much the U.S. economy is being tanked by medical costs and, medical corruption. So that's a big one. Medical, yes. Count me down for that one.
Yeah.
What other ideas you would like to have? In addition to because the next show we're probably going to do on medical. That's not bad. The next STEM show. So I wouldn't have.
That gives me a week to set it up. So that's more than enough time.
Exactly. Especially if we can get some medical professionals in this thing. Yeah. Like nurses, anything from nurse assistants, the system of medicine, because let's just be faced, the U.S. medical system is very corrupt. There's no way in hell 600,000+ people should lose their homes for medical bills. And I want to give you guys, if you guys are listening, particularly if you're a married couple, this is going to be a very important piece of information. When my father got sick and he had to end up going into a, a nursing home, nursing homes are extremely expensive. And one of the first things they're going to request is the assets of the person who is being admitted, i.e. the person who was ill. And what happened is he had locked-in syndrome because he had kidney failure. One of the things my mother did, and it saved our house, She got a lawyer, and she got all the assets from his name put into hers. So his estate, he personally, was not, you know, sort of, you know, the house was not, you know, used as collateral for his medical expenses. And brothers and sisters, if you are married couples, particularly if you are married and you have children, understand how that process works. So if any of one of you get sick, have a lawyer or someone retainer to get that process done, because that will save your house.
I want to talk about that. I want to build on that a little bit, and that's another show that I want to do. I want to attack this straw man of taxes, because conservatives and Republicans love talking about taxes. Oh, you get the tax. Yeah. You know what? And I've said this many times, and I'll continue to say it. It's not taxes that people have a problem with. The problem is the taxes don't help the people. Exactly. That's what the problem is. You don't hear nobody in Norway and Denmark complaining about high taxes. Why? Because they can get sick, go to a hospital, and not get a fucking bill.
Yep. There you go.
But in America, you're paying high taxes, but your taxes aren't helping you. All they're doing is helping out rich motherfuckers, and that's a system that we think is plausible. That's a credible system. There's a profit motive in the medical system. Why is there a fucking profit motive in the medical system?
Not only that, but you know, one of the things I noticed that I'm paying taxes, and you know, to maintain a public park, right? And if I go to a park, I see a sign on the thing saying all adults should be supervised by children. That's another problem with me. Like one time when I lived in the Bronx, I wanted to go to a park, you know, because I work out on like the park, you know, the monkey bars and stuff, do pull-ups and stuff like that. If there are children around, I don't want to be around them because, you know, you get accused of something weird. It's all these things like in the United States where your tax dollars are being used for stuff that sometimes go against you.
Not sometimes. I would say all the time.
All the time go
like they're
you.
actually having a discussion about whether there should be universal health care. Really? Exactly. When you just spent $2 trillion and counting on some freaking war?
I feel you, brother. You know, it's also, I'm glad you mentioned taxes because I wanted, because you know, while preparing for this show, I was thinking about the particularly the business enterprises that a lot of BAIO members are going to be engaged in, as you know, we go forward and you know pursue our skill sets and you know make money. How to structure with respect to structuring BAIO member projects. Getting 501Cs or whatever it is, so that our money goes to our projects and not Uncle Sam. So using the tax code to benefit us while at the same time starving Uncle Sam. So that's a major issue that's a major topic to discuss, and we definitely want a tax professional on the show when discussing that. So yeah, how to strengthen nationhood while at the same time not adding the U.S. nationhood. The U.S. is national power, because rather not, they take most of our income anyway. So why not just get most of that back for ourselves? I mean,
I like that.
That's a great one.
I think that's another good show topic. On piggybacking on that is not that the BAIO would be responsible for it, but maybe just have kind of a roundtable thing of kicking around ideas of how a national money pot or nationalistic money fund would be created. How would we go about doing that? And what are the tax ramifications of that? If we could dance around that, how could we use our money to correlate with international resources and funding? And how we, I don't know the term I'm looking for, I guess a nationalistic kind of money fund for us. I know the BAIO wouldn't be responsible for that, but just the creation of an entity that would
sort of a primordial IRS, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
actually, that's one of the topics that I posted on my page.
Oh, really?
Like on the BAIO page, I posted that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and for all the detractors listening, this is only discussion based. We're not actually talking about collecting money from members as of the moment, because we know I mean,
no, like I said, it's not a BAIO thing. It's just
it's a
among black
BAIO
people
member
thing.
space thing.
Yeah,
I
like
mean,
how can we?
it's very strange because not very strange, but I always make it a point to discuss any project. I always say project consisting of BAIO members because the BAIO is just its members. There's no major organization. I look at the BAIO as the primordial United States of America. Basically, when it first started, it was just an idea, and you had these states. So the states would be the different BAIO chapters. You have New York, Arkansas, you have the UK, Texas, things of that sort. And those members of those chapters, they do their projects, they put their monies in. And the overall organization is pretty much as weak as the federal government. As these members, as these chapters build up their efforts and this thing gets more organized, and the need for a federal system or federal-like system, i.e. the BAIO overall arching organization, those chapters where I see it giving that overall organization power. And that's where you come up with your governance, who your board, your members, who your officers are going to be, who's going to be your president, this and the third. But that's going to come in the future. We're not pushing that right now. Like, for example, every BAIO sort of, operation is essentially every individual member. Like, I do currency trading. That's my operation. But, whatever I win or whatever, I make sure let the BAIO organization knows, what's going on and how I can contribute it. The same goes with every other one. And, to prove that point, it's like when last time Holip and I had a discussion where the gentleman offered us like $200K, and we just told him, hold on to your money, build your money, and, find out what skills you have that made you to have that money and teach it to us. Now, that's what pretty much separates us, because I guarantee you, if you went to any other organization saying, hey, I got $200K, especially the dude, we're not mentioning names, who's supposed to build a school, they would tell you, hey, give it to me. So, that's one of the things we have. That's one of the things that separates us. We prefer to be as honest and open and organized as possible.
Yeah.
Another thing, a discussion I want to have discussed is the importance of lawyers. Like, we really need to have get all the lawyers and the lawyers in the BAIO up to par, because everything from medical to taxes to national to aggregating funds is all going to be contingent on lawyers and drawing up contracts. So that's one of the main things we're going to have to discuss is BAIO law. Members consisting of, attorneys, paralegals, things like that, so people who know the law. And if we can get some of those folks in, that'll be awesome.
Right.
Not only that, I'd like to hear one. I'd like to hear a show dedicated entirely to space. I know that sounds crazy, but I would like to.
Not at all.
No, it ain't.
I would love to discuss with you guys, then Dotta, Neo, everybody. I'd like to discuss with you guys how we think we could get to space, what it would take.
Of course. Actually, we can talk about that now. I mean, because we've actually brainstormed on that before.
Oh, no, don't talk about it now. Like I said, leave them with wanting more.
Remember when we did a BAIO show before and Mikhail called in and we talked about nanotech?
Yeah.
And one of the things we discussed
was supposed to call into this show.
He's in this show?
No, he was supposed to. It's a lot of people that's missing in action. I'm gonna get on their case after.
No, but remember we discussed nanotech and the utilization of nanotechnology and the building of super strong materials, and one of those things was a space elevator. Because I'm glad you mentioned space, because believe it or not, space is a multi-trillion with a $trillion dollar industry.
Yeah, it is.
And they were saying, because remember we mentioned before, getting a satellite into space, $500,000. Before, years ago, that would cost you a couple $1 million, because the space was solely regulated it was controlled by the government. Either NASA launched it up, or you would get the French to launch it up, or the British to launch it up from somewhere. Now space has become privatized, and it's a big business. And
Neo,
pretty much, what's up?
You're actually making me think of just how incompetent black leadership is.
Really?
500,000 is all it takes to have a satellite.
Yep. in this modern day.
$500,000 is all it takes.
The brother said it. I mean,
for some reason,
I think so. Yeah, $500,000.
$500,000 the largest satellite.
For some reason, the 44 to 50 million black people here in America can't afford the $500,000 satellite. You know why? Because nobody's even asking for it. Nobody gives a fuck. None of these leaders are talking about anything about and revolving around. Do you know? All right, here's even one better for you.
We could have our own satellite-based communications network.
I ain't even going to go that far. Here's one that's even better for you. Do you know what it would take for us to have a news station?
Zero.
A truck and a helicopter.
Exactly.
But we can't afford that. It's 44, 50 million black people. We can't afford a helicopter. We can't afford a truck.
No. And nowadays,
big ass antenna coming out of it. We can't afford any of that.
Brother, it gets even better. Nowadays, like I say, being alive today is the best time for. Can you imagine if Marcus Garvey and Malcolm X were alive today? Oh my, they would own. Like, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. Brother, you can have a news organization with YouTube Live and everything like that. You can have your own news organization, just having people out in the streets filming stuff. I mean, we are actually able to contact brothers and sisters on the continent and give our perspective on their issues with respect to the Chinese and stuff. Remember that case where that Asian worker was in Kenya talking greasy about the Kenyans?
Yep.
I personally believe he wouldn't have been deported that fast were it not for Kenyans in Kenya back and forth with black Americans, us giving them the skinny on what racism is, how you are being demeaned. So, I mean, what's great about this modern age is that in the age of technology gets cheaper, faster, and better as time goes on. That's Moore's law. And I'm glad you mentioned space and aerospace, because one of the things mentioned is that the country that first gets a space elevator is going to be a huge superpower. Why? Because getting things into space, carries it's very expensive, and it takes a lot of energy to do, and you got to do a lot of coordination with it. So we'll definitely have a space and aerospace discussion, because it's the future.
Yeah, we shouldn't limit ourselves.
We should limit ourselves. Yeah, exactly. Even alternative energy. I mean, particularly theoretical physics like quantum mechanics, quantum superposition things, quantum-based computing. That's another thing that needs to be discussed, because China and America is working on it. And I mean, and even in our small state we're in, we should even have that on our, on our radar and our ambitions, because we should be big with our ambitions. I
was just gonna remark, like, all the things we're talking about, man. It's like we could seamlessly push the Chinese out of Africa if we just implement all this stuff. We don't have to shoot anybody. We get our brothers and sisters to buy in all of this stuff. I mean, can you imagine what that's gonna do to the African psyche collectively to see a satellite being launched off the continent of Africa?
Exactly.
Most of them see it. We got to get everybody to see it. But just for African country, do you know how what that would do even to the minds of African heads of state, that one African country should launch something up into the. It doesn't have to be on par with the United States, but just the fact that we have something up there and it's floating and it's signaling down to the continent, and that's something we did. The Chinese didn't help us. The European didn't help us. The Indians didn't help us. It was all African ingenuity, African hands, African time, and African commitment. That's power, brother. I'm excited about that.
And that's why, and one of the things I love about, I mentioned Rwanda, that President Paul Kagame, that's where he comes from. He said, we're going to do this all African all the way. And that's what I love about it. And that's what the BAIO stands for. All African, black African, all the way. And, it is like, and I love about this that we don't think small. We dream big. I mean, I want to even discuss like free energy. I want to discuss quantum mechanics as far as advanced research and advanced sciences, because you can deal with, 0-point energy. That's basically you're using the energy from a vacuum of space to, generate power. And that could lead to, things like, wormhole technology, warp drives. I want to go into all of that. Yes, we want to go that far. I mean, why not? Because everybody else could dream big and dream crazy. Why not? I mean, I like dreaming big and not dreaming.
Yeah.
Yep. Dream big, dream crazy, dream often.
Well,
I'll say for it.
Speaking on the topic of space and the technology and satellites, there actually was a challenge. You know, everybody does these challenges, but they don't never show these challenges. You can't get Black people to get into these challenges that's actually going to be beneficial to us. Where they did the space launch challenge with the university. It's part of the S.T.E.M field. And they had $1 million reward for the grand prize. So, and what we uses it for, we argue dumb points like the Earth is flat. Well, let me show you how the Earth is not flat. They launched. Oh, here's how they missed the whole point. Instead of taking a good point, they used the information, the facts that the Earth is round, and they use this actual video that the challenge of that these universities put out to shoot a rocket up into space, and the fact that they missed the point that Afrikan have a couple of satellites out there too. So how do we we argue dumb points like, yo, what about the Earth is flat? Well, let's prove the Earth is round. Let's go ahead and get our technology people and shoot a satellite up there, and we take our own information. But no, we want to argue this dumb point, which has no benefits to us. You know what I'm saying? So
exactly.
Like I say,
my thing is this. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, brother.
No, I'm just saying that it's that we are like behind on a lot of stuff. We arguing dumb shit when we actually behind in technology. We need to catch up with everybody else. And like you said, the actual satellite community is kind of privatized now, so that's why everybody's doing their own challenges now to see what they can put out. And go ahead.
And I have a very simple, effective rebuttal to the flat earthers, but typically the flat earthers who are in the conscious community, and I hate talking about them, but this really drives to a point in terms of how they are just going to jump on any cockamamie bandwagon just to get views. I mean, rather it's like 1 minute remember all the conscious community people were against the Federal Reserve and saying it was all this, that, and the third. So they got into that because the Zeitgeist movement. Well, actually, Louis Farrakhan did it before the Zeitgeist movement, so I give them that. But why are conscious community people just jumping on the fads of flat Earth? Well, my thing is this. A couple of years ago, the conscious community was saying, well, us Africans knew that the Earth was round before everybody else.
Right.
So how can you, as a member of the so-called conscious community, be a flat earther is beyond me.
Listen.
Stupid question.
Listen to this, man. Let me just say this. People hate me and say that I'm a hypocrite because I haven't been to the continent. And people hate Dynas who goes to the continent all the fucking time. So don't try to make sense out of any of this shit.
No, I just say that was my point. I'm like, just go forward and do what we got to do, because the fact of the matter is, if they aren't effective against the powers that be, they won't be effective against us who are striving to overcome the powers that be. So they're a non-issue now, and they're not going to be an issue in the future.
And can I just say I just wanted to say 2 words that dead the whole flat Earth bullshit. Lunar eclipse. Let's move on to the next subject.
There you go.
I have a stupid question. The flat Earth thing is a real thing. Like, there are actually people that think
Yes, they do.
Although
there are Facebook page devoted to it.
Yeah.
I know.
You know what I think? I think it's a mixture. I think it's a mix. I think there's people that believe in it, and then there's people who are taking advantage of the fact that idiots do believe in it.
Yeah, of course. There's a stupid person. There's a smart person willing to make money off a stupid person. That's always been like, that's always been like a cosmic mix for some reason. You always have dumb people and people willing to make money off dumb people. And you have people who are sort of, more ethical, who can't just go into the muck and mire of being dumb, who's just trying to say, you know what?
There can't be a conscious person that believes that, because the Moors, it's documented, the Moors taught from globes.
I guarantee you, I've seen videos. I'm gonna share them. I've seen videos. I've seen conscious people. They are now, because we don't understand about the conscious community, and it sucks that we're just devoting time to them. But you know, it's important to mention them. They love to go on the fad of the day because they always have to seem relevant. I give them this. They try to keep it fresh. The problem is they don't come up with the freshness. So usually they follow what they will follow what white conspiracy theorists are talking about, and then go on from there, because they know most black folks who want knowledge of some sort, who don't want to acquire knowledge that requires you to actually work, are willing to just settle for any old dumb thing. So they go for any old dumb thing. Yeah, that's what they do. So they would do anything from
clicks and views, man. That's what it's all about.
I came up with an idea, basically, how do we get the BAIO message to be not dumbed down, but how do we trick these people into getting into land infrastructure nation? But that was a whole nother story, but we're not going to worry about that for so much. But that's
as a matter of fact, we're going to wrap this up.
Okay.
We went like a half an hour
so
past.
We got aerospace. So we got aerospace. So that's the air, but going back to the aerospace thing, yes, space and aerospace is definitely going to be a topic, because believe it or not, space and aerospace is getting cheaper now. I don't know if you guys seen the SpaceX launch. Elon Musk's company, SpaceX, they did a launch of the Falcon Heavy rocket. That was the most extraordinary thing ever. And to see those people who worked on that project just cheer as the rocket was launched up, and you had the booster rockets on the side come down and land vertically on all the pads that they were launched from, was just awesome. To see those people cheering like that, I would love to see that for Africans, that we can do something like that.
You will.
Yep.
And you will.
So,
but anyway, y'all, I want to give y'all some encouragement. We have 34 likes and 28 dislikes. So keep up the good work, guys. And the 28 dislikes is from one person.
One person?
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't know. You haven't been looking at the chat room, but there was one guy who kept creating multiple accounts and getting snapped out of existence by Bell, but he just kept creating them and creating them. So it's one person that's responsible. So I love the fact that you guys brought out the Tasmanian devil in these trolls. You did an excellent job today. Applaud yourselves.
Thank you very much, brother. I'm trying to fathom this. If you have energy to create 28 accounts, do you know how much? I mean, I barely have enough energy to create another one account.
And Neil, not only did they create
all those passwords.
Not only did they create 28 accounts, they did it with a hot rag and baby oil at the same time.
Oh my goodness, man! I mean, seriously. I mean, can we recruit this guy for BAIO counterintelligence? This guy, I mean, damn, I'm impressed. I'm impressed.
But anyway, yo, let's wrap this up. It was good talking to all of you, and I'm gonna actually, I want to put. I don't think I have Ollie's YouTube page.
Oh, it's just Dawson. I need to build it up and do something with it. So
just looking like me.
Just either send it to me or put it somewhere so I can add it, because I want to put all of you guys YouTube links in the description box so people can get it, subscribe to you and keep in contact.
Also, all right, because everybody put in what they want to discuss. I want to do a show on advanced sciences and advanced research, like the CERN particle collider, things of that sort. No, we're not getting to a Mandela effect, people. But the importance of like advanced scientific research, advanced physical work, and quantum mechanics, that's something I want to talk to. But I will do that only in conjunction with Mikhail, because he actually, and I hope the brothers listen, I hope he hears this, he actually did postgraduate research on in advanced science and in nanotechnology. So I would love to have that discussion with him.
We got our own Tony Stark in the BAIO.
Yes, we do have a Tony Stark here. I mean, yes, and that's something I want to do. and I'm glad I do want to have that discussion, that aerospace discussion, because you know it's good to be down to earth at times, but sometimes you got to just let the imagination flow, because that attracts a lot of people. Most importantly, there are a lot of younger people, black folks, listen to this in their teens and early 20s, who want to see a progressive black organization that wants to build a nation that, you know, that appreciates the power of the imagination. Because remember what Einstein said, imagination is more important than intelligence. You know, sort of creating our reality. But I just wanted to mention that one. But Holip, you was wrapping everything up.
Yeah, man. I just want to say peace to everybody in the chat room, and much props. We got to give a standing ovation to Bell Thanos.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And I hope they don't remember them.
I hope they don't. I'm still trying to get over how one dude created 28.
Yes.
That's unfathomable to me. I mean, I give up after 3. I can't troll them. You know how much energy it takes to be a troll?
That shows you the power of the eyes, man. They love those Holip eyes.
I'm telling you, you got to take them eyes down. You're gonna get stalkers, man. I'm telling you. All right, bro.
All right, y'all. Have a good one. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
All right, brothers. But it was great talking to you, brothers, and I was happy to speak with that. Just as a remind everyone, the next show may be on medical, because that was in the first one given up. We're gonna have one definitely on aerospace if it's a STEM show, but we're also gonna have one on taxes, featuring lawyers and the use of the law with respect of establishing a money pot. Because I'm glad you mentioned that, brother, with respect to the national money pot and the gathering of funds, because we want to make this thing as the governance to be as high as possible, and definitely we're going to have lawyers involved in that. So if any members of the BAIO who are lawyers, or if you're in the legal industry, or you know if you're a paralegal, please let us know who you are so we can have that discussion with you. But respect to everything else, brothers. I'm happy that we had this discussion. The show was a great, you know, it's very informative with respect to different types of networking technologies, exploring energy, and exploring different types of systems, exploring education. It was a major opportunity to talk with you, brothers, and I deeply appreciate it. With that being said, this is Neo-Black Nationalists of the BAIO. We thank everyone for listening, and we look forward to our next discussion and having you all with us. Peace, brothers and sisters.
Peace.
All right,
peace, brother.
Peace.